Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve jivan mukti. Through satsangam, you become detached, and when you by detachment, you come out of all the delusion. Then mind becomes quiet, because thoughts become less and less, and mind becomes quiet and it becomes still. And when there are no thoughts and the mind is pure and quiet, when you're no longer imagining yourself as a finite entity, when you're no longer imagining yourself as a person, when you're no longer imagining yourself in terms of body, mind and intellect or anything of this world, that is the time you realize who you are. Om Namo Baghavathe Shri Ramanaya. Hari Om. Glad to be here on another occasion to reflect aloud on this series of Ramana's Atma Vichara. Today, we are going to continue the topic Satsang, which we discussed in the last session. There's a beautiful verse in Bhaja Govindam about this Satsang. In our last session, we said Satsang is the means for self-realization. So, one may wonder how this Satsang becomes a means for self-realization. And this is beautifully explained by Bhagavan Shankaracharya in Bhaja Govindam. And the verse is Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve jivan mukti. He says, Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve jivan mukti. So, if you look at it, it starts with the word Satsanga and it ends with jivan mukti. Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatva, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve jivan mukti. So here Bhagavan Shankaracharya is explaining how satsangam results in jivan mukti through a series of cause and effect relationship. So he says satsanga. So we saw what is satsanga. That is association with the Mahatmas who have studied, understood and realized the truth. Association with the scriptures, association with the writings of the Mahatmas, teachings of the Mahatmas, association with the fellow seekers who are seeking this truth. So that is what we saw as satsang. So when you associate with them, that satsangatve, he says nissangatvam. Nissangatvam is actually you become non-attached. Detachment. So satsangam leads to detachment. So when you associate with the truth, associate with anything which is related to the truth, detachment comes as a result. So detachment from what? Detachment from that which is unreal. Detachment from finite. Detachment from this notion that I am this person. Detachment from the notion that I am this body, mind and intellect. Detachment from the worldly objects. Detachment from temporary, ephemeral objects of this world. So satsangam leads to nissangam, detachment. So when you detach from all of these, what happens? Nissangatve nirmohatvam. Then your delusion goes off. Because when you are attached to something through likes or dislikes, when you are attached to something, that deludes you. It doesn't let you see the truth. But when the attachment goes away because of the satsang, then the delusion goes away. So you are no longer seeing unreal as real and real as unreal. The distorted picture goes away. So satsangatve nissangatvam, nissangatve nirmohatvam. So delusion goes away. And nirmohatve nischala tattvam. When you are no longer deluded, meaning when you are no longer mistaking unreal to be real and real as unreal, then what happens is nischala tattvam. The mind becomes quiet, becomes calm, because all of these thoughts are about the finite, and because we regard them as real, we go on creating more and more thoughts. But when through satsangam you become detached, and when you by detachment you come out of all the delusion, then mind becomes quiet, because thoughts become less and less and mind becomes quiet and it becomes still. And when there are no thoughts and the mind is pure and quiet, when you're no longer imagining yourself as a finite entity, when you're no longer imagining yourself as a person, when you're no longer imagining yourself in terms of body, mind and intellect or anything of this world, that is the time you realize who you are. When the thought ceases, the experience of the self begins. So experiencing the self, experiencing who you are, experiencing your infinite nature, experiencing that your nature is the truth, is what is known as Jivan Mukti. So the Jivan Mukti happens when the mind becomes pure and still. Pure and still meaning when there are no longer wrong notions about you. So that becomes possible only when all the delusions are gone. And the delusions go away when all the attachments are gone. And the attachments go away when you associate yourself with truth in the form of satsang, by associating with Mahatmas, realized masters, their teachings, the teachings what is contained in the scriptures, etc. When you read about what is real and what is unreal, Nitya, Anitya, Viveka, what is Atma and Anatma, Atma, Anatma, Viveka, through all of that. As a result, when you study, as a result of that, you give up your attachment to what is unreal. You give up your attachment and identification with what you are not. So that's how satsang leads to nissangam. And when you're no longer attached with the finite, changing, temporary, your delusions go away, and when your delusions are gone, your mind becomes still, quiet and calm, ready to experience who you are, which is known as Jivan Mukti. So beautifully explained by Bhagavan Shankaracharya, using the cause and effect technique. Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. So that is how satsang becomes the means to realizing the truth or realizing the self. Om Namo Baghavathe Shri Ramanaya.